talking about and actually be able to defend it in a way that made sense to me anyway. But I think that was one of my prouder moments. In terms of biggest disappointment, I mean, honestly, there were not many, but I think I, in retrospect, wish, so I was working on a lot of the public health and prevention and disparities and workforce provisions of the law, and certainly there's a huge chunk of the law that's related to delivery system reform and insurance and other elements of the administration that I didn't really touch. And so I think in retrospect, I wish I would have pushed myself to go outside of my comfort zone a little bit more and really, you know, work with John and work with other folks in areas that were not familiar to me and that I didn't know about and weren't as comfortable for me to talk about and articulate. And I think it would have, certainly I was exposed to those, everybody was, but really to be able to dive deep and broaden my horizons, I think would have been a wise thing to do. Martin?
Thanks. So I'm going to start with a disappointment first. Not that my fellowship was disappointing, but it sets up where the accomplishment comes from. And part of my disappointment came is I had selected to work with the Senate Finance Committee. It was a very tough decision. I'm fairly middle of the road in my views, and both the Democrats and Republicans had some interest. And I decided to go with the Republicans because I thought that the people there would mentor me really well and give me opportunities to go to meetings and do work and do lots of things. Well, 2 weeks later, the Senate flipped unexpectedly from majority Republican to minority. So we no longer had the opportunity to set the political agenda and the policy agenda over the next year, and that was obviously hugely disappointing. And it also had a carry-on effect later on at the end of my fellowship that I would have liked to have stayed with the Finance Committee and continued to work, but when you flip majority to minority, you also flip budget size. So when you get 2/3 of the budget as a majority, you get 1/3 as a minority. So there was no space for me anymore to stay there and continue to work with them. So that was the same disappointment. But it brings me back to the accomplishment was New Democrat agenda came in. This is Speaker Pelosi for the first time in the House. Senate's in control, which was a bit unexpected. They had a number of issues that they really wanted to accomplish, and one of them actually brings us back to the conversation we had in the last section about drug pricing. The non-interference clause in Part D was a major debate and major agenda item for the Democrats to try and pass. During that session, the first 2-3 months of 2007, we spent a significant amount of time learning the policy issues, speaking to lots of experts, getting ourselves geared up. We had binders of information that were this big. We were ready for a floor fight, and we did such a good job, it lasted an hour, and that was it, and they just decided to kill it and get rid of it. So it was a lot of work to not have a huge payoff in the end, but we obviously were effectual in what we did.
Well, this to me suggests how unexpected and how some of the biggest accomplishments come from things that you hadn't expected, and how surprising your experience can be, which I think is really accurate. My next question is, what do you think makes a good fellow? What do you think makes a successful fellow? And I'm going to start, because I'm going to answer that, and then we'll go this way. Since I had the pleasure of being able to hire fellows and work with fellows, they're not sitting up here. Somehow Sibel had stacked the deck. They're not the Finance Committee fellows up here, but Kelly's back there.
You and I are the biggest consumer. We're the biggest consumer.
So Sibel and I probably hired more fellows than anybody when we were on the Hill. And I'll tell you what I really liked about having fellows. Winston Fellows are the smartest. They are, I think, younger than some of the other programs and really committed and interested in helping out and doing what you need. And I think that sounds obvious, but you know, we also had RWJ Fellows, and I don't know, no offense to RWJ Fellows, but you bring in these physicians who are mid-career, who are running a department, and they come into the Hill and they think, their first thought is, who are these non-medical people making health policy decisions? Like, you know, they don't know anything about healthcare, and you know, that coming in with that sort of attitude, and that is not the case with Winston Fellows. Winston Fellows came in, they were excited, they were interested, they were intrigued with the process, they wanted to learn, and so for all of those reasons, if I could hire a Winston Fellow, I always did. But let's hear what you think makes a good fellow, and we'll go this way.
Yeah, I think part of that is what I was going to get to as well. But first, I think they're inquisitive, and that's the nature, perhaps, of the structure of the fellowship, where you spend the first 2-3 months just meeting people and talking to them about their experiences about healthcare policy issues. It really, really matters in getting that opportunity to talk to people about the issues you're not asking them for money, you're not lobbying them, you're not advocating, you just want to hear about their experience and try and pull a little piece of that information. I think that most of us, if not all of us, are pretty humbled by the opportunity that we got as well, and I think that passes through. I think we were respectful of the esteem of the fellowship and the board members we represent and the former fellows we represent, and that is something that we go out there with a quiet, strong confidence that we have knowledge, but not thinking that we know everything or that there aren't opportunities there to learn. The fellowship I always describe to people, and I say, well, what was it like and how would you say it helped you? And I always kind of relate it to a Chutes and Ladders board, and if you get the right dice roll in the first level, you get that huge ladder that brings you all the way up. That's how I always thought about the fellowship, just vaulted me into this opportunity. And Jay talked earlier about opportunity and creating value from that opportunity, and I think everybody here really did that to the max. I was just lucky enough to have that opportunity, and so it's great.
I couldn't agree more with what you just said in terms of basically everything, humble confidence. But I think also Winston Fellows are really adaptable, so you can put them anywhere and they will, you can put us anywhere and we'll figure it out. I think a lot of the fellows have said they were we were all thrown into things that we had no idea. For many of us, it was our first exposure to DC. And so I think adaptability is key. I think open-mindedness is really key, not being so myopic in terms of your point of view, whether you're Dem, a Republican, an independent, whatever, but also really, I think, strong personality-wise in terms of being able to get along with anyone. As a fellow, you have to come in, you have a certain level of expertise, you probably have your master or your JD, but you also are the new kid on the block. And so you have to be able to present yourself as willing to learn, but also knowing that you can help get the job done. So I think it's a very fine line in terms of what that means. I think the last thing is strong work ethic. There are no Winston Fellows that are 9 to 5, see you later. I think you're just willing to put in as many hours as you need to and get the job done and really show that you're really passionate about health policy and the potential and the opportunity that you have to work with some of the greatest people in the field.
It's 10 years later, I'm still working pretty hard, so I guess
Yeah, it's
still
true.
on the fellowship. I don't know. I thought the fellowship ended.
The fellowship
That
is
says
a
more about
lifetime.
you, Martin, than it
Yeah.
does about the jobs that you have. That's what I've discovered in my own life.
I strongly agree with everything that Martin and Kat said. I added one other item, which is that you have to have that bug for health policy. That I bet most of you in the room, you know what I'm talking about. I remember getting bitten by it in college and just thinking, I don't want to be thinking about anything else. I like thinking about scarce resource trade-offs and how we figure out who deserves what benefits and who we're going to help as a society to make sure they have access to care. And I never wanted to not be thinking about that stuff. And so when I was in business school and everyone was trying to get it to a McKinsey or a VC firm or something, and this email came across my inbox that said you could go work on policy, and I thought, this is awesome. This is what I want to be doing. And no one in my school no one else even applied for it. In some schools, I think they only let you, at least they used to be that you only one person per school could apply. And no one even had any interest, and I thought this is exactly what I want to be doing. So that really helps, because when you get here, you spend the summer doing 3 meetings a day with
Or more.
more for whatever it is, 60 days, 80 days, with people who work in health policy, and you're having the same discussion every time, 3 or 4 times a day. And if that's not everything you want to be doing, I can see how it would be a little boring. But if it is what you want to be doing, it's the most fascinating thing in the world. To just be totally overwhelmed and immersed by all of these folks who make up this industry in this town. it couldn't be a better immersion experience. So if you're asking yourself if you want to apply, I'd also ask yourself, if I've been bitten by that bug, do I wake up thinking about this? Because if you have, you need to apply.